Have you ever wondered why some people, within just a few seconds, make you feel uneasy in a way you can't quite name? A fleeting glance, a subtle movement of the hand, a smile that lingers a fraction too long. You don't know exactly why, but your body knows something isn't real. People aren't as good at hiding as they think. Words can be rehearsed, but the eyes cannot. Stories can be carefully scripted, but the pauses in a voice betray everything. Nietzsche once said, "Human nature is revealed most clearly in the moments when it tries hardest to conceal itself." And that is when the art of reading begins. This isn't mysticism, and it's not some magician's trick. It's psychology stripped bare, philosophy reflecting through behavior, the unconscious leaking into every small sign. In the next few minutes, you will be guided through 18 psychological truths, keys Nietzsche called cracks in the mask, that allow you to read anyone. Not just to know what they're thinking, but to uncover what they're trying to hide. And maybe, most importantly, you'll begin to read yourself. Because the hardest face to read is always the familiar one, staring back in the mirror. Have you ever met someone whose smile made you feel cold? Not because of perfect teeth or sweet words, but because the curve of the mouth and the eyes weren't speaking the same language. That is the first truth. Real emotions always leak through the body, even when words are under control. Nietzsche called this the betrayal of instinct. The more you try to hide, the more your body speaks for you. Someone can tell a happy story, but their hands clench together. They can say, "I'm fine," but their shoulders collapse. Reading people isn't about listening. It's about observing the gap between words and the body. And once you see this truth, you begin to notice another world where every slow blink, every heavy breath is a confession. But it doesn't stop with them, Nietzsche warned. You too are being read in the same way. How many times have you nodded yes while your stomach tightened? How many times have you smiled politely while your heart raced with anxiety? If you want to read others, you must be brave enough to see your signals. Because the second truth is this: anyone desperate to be liked always exposes their weakness. The one who always smiles to please, the one who nods to avoid conflict, thinks they are hiding their insecurity, but in reality, they are shouting, "Take advantage of me." Nietzsche once wrote, "The weak are not hated for being weak. They are hated for pretending to be strong." And that is the easiest signal to read. Think back to the last time you said, "It's fine," when everything inside you screamed no. The perceptive person only needs a second to see it. Which is why reading people doesn't begin with learning tricks. It begins with admitting this. Your own body has been speaking for a long time. The real question is, are you willing to listen to yourself before you listen to anyone else? Nietzsche once said, "We rarely see others as they are, but only the reflection of our desires and fears." This leads us to the third truth. You never read anyone objectively. Your prejudices, your memories, and your old wounds tint every glance you cast. When you suspect someone, it's often not because they are truly suspicious, but because you were once betrayed, and your unconscious is searching for that same trace again. And when you idolize someone, it's not because they are flawless, but because you have projected the unlived dreams of your own life onto their image. This brings us to the fourth truth. The more a person tries to control the impression they make, the more their falseness leaks through. Have you noticed that those who seem too perfect, who speak smoothly, who act without a single slip, often leave you with a feeling of distrust? Nietzsche believed that a genuine soul always carries cracks, and it's those very cracks that make them real. Those who are too polished forget that no audience believes in a mask without flaws, and the strain of maintaining that mask is exactly what makes them easier to read. Then comes the fifth truth. Everyone carries a hidden story they are constantly telling themselves. And if you listen closely, you'll hear them repeated in every conversation. The one who sees themselves as a victim will always insert details that prove everything is against me. The one obsessed with success will twist every topic back to achievements. Nietzsche once mocked this tendency, saying, "We do not speak the truth. We merely chew again the story the ego wants to hear." If you want to read someone, listen for the hidden story that chains them. But here lies a danger. Once you start to see these patterns, you'll realize you are not exempt. You also carry biases. You also try to control your image, and you are also repeating a hidden story about yourself. And that is when you face a difficult truth. Reading people does not just expose them, it exposes you. And Nietzsche's question remains sharp as a blade. Do you have the courage to see yourself with the same eyes you use to dissect others? Nietzsche once warned that man is the creature most skilled at hiding from himself. When you descend into the deeper layers of the unconscious, you find that what someone denies most fiercely is often the very thing they are hiding. A person who insists, "I don't need recognition," is usually the one craving it the most. The one who mocks love may be the one most terrified of abandonment. The unconscious reveals itself through the very things we reject, and that is the doorway to deeper psychological reading. Alongside this comes the seventh truth. The body does not know how to lie. Nietzsche never studied body language in the modern sense, but he once wrote, "The soul hides in movements more than in words." Averted eyes, a clenched hand, a breath that grows heavy. These are instinct, and instinct is not under rational control. Anyone can say, "I'm fine," but the body usually betrays that claim. If you learn to watch carefully, the unconscious exposes itself in the smallest of gestures. But perhaps the most unsettling is the eighth truth. People always reveal themselves in how they treat those weaker than them. When someone is polite to their boss yet cruel to the waiter, you need no further proof. That is who they are. Nietzsche once wrote, "Watch how a man behaves when he has no reason to impress anyone, and you will see his true nature." This is the mirror no one can conceal, because it exposes the rawest instinct for power. And then we arrive at the ninth truth. The unconscious always leaks through repetition. Watch closely, they fall into the same toxic relationships, the same conflicts with friends, the same failures at work. This is not a coincidence. It is the unconscious repeating its script. Nietzsche saw this clearly when he said, "He who is not conscious of himself will be dragged by fate through the same ruts of the wheel." To recognize repetition is to hold the key, because it points directly to the wound that has not yet healed. At this point, you start to see the pattern. The unconscious does not hide. It broadcasts itself through signals, through the body, through how one treats the powerless, and through the cycles that never break. The real question is, do you dare to see it? Do you dare to admit that you too are revealing all of this? And before we continue, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what pattern in your life do you keep repeating, the one you have mistaken for fate? Who do you treat with coldness simply because they bring you no benefit? And what do you always deny, even though it is the clearest sign of your inner fear? If you are still here, the next part will open a deeper layer. Not just how to recognize these truths, but how to break free from them. Because seeing the truth is not enough. If you don't learn to read to liberate yourself, you will remain forever a puppet of your unconscious. Imagine every person as an old house with many locked rooms. The bright living room is where we welcome guests, where we display the most beautiful paintings. But behind it lie dark rooms filled with things we don't want anyone to see. Nietzsche hinted at this when he said, Man builds a facade to conceal his true core, and that is the 10th truth. Everyone has a hidden area, but it is precisely there that their essence is revealed. The more someone decorates the facade, the stronger the stench from the dark room behind it. When you step into that house, don't rush to admire what the owner proudly shows you. Pay attention instead to the doors left half shut, the dusty corridors, because there you'll find the 11th truth. The truth always leaks out in the gaps, not in what is displayed. The way someone avoids a question, the way they change the subject, or the things they never mention at all, these speak louder than what they say. The unconscious is not only in what is present, but it also lives in silence. And then there is something even more delicate. The 12th truth. The true nature of a person does not appear when they are in control, but when they unexpectedly lose it. When anger bursts, when fear makes them stumble, when they blurt out something not yet filtered by reason. That is the moment the dark room door swings open. Nietzsche called it the crack in the mask. And in that instant, if you are sharp enough, you see the real person. The house metaphor is not only a way to describe others, but it is also a mirror for you. How many rooms inside you remain locked tight? How many silences do you protect so no one can touch them? And have you ever startled yourself with an unexpected reaction, as if someone else inside you had suddenly spoken out? That house is the mind. Those dark rooms are the unconscious. And reading people is, in truth, the journey of daring to cross those thresholds, whether they belong to others or yourself. But be careful, because the deeper you go, the more you'll find not just dust, but things that may overwhelm you. That is the moment we must turn to the defense mechanisms of the unconscious, the very thing we will begin to unravel in the next part. If the house of the mind always has dark rooms, then the question is, how do you avoid getting lost in that darkness? The first solution is not to rush in and throw every door open, but to learn to recognize the subtle traces the unconscious leaves behind. This is the 13th truth. People reveal more through unconscious everyday actions than through what they deliberately present. The way someone tugs at their collar when nervous, the darting of the eyes when lying, or the forced smile when a sore spot is touched. These are the cracks in the wall. But it's not only about reading others. Even more important, you must observe yourself. This is the 14th truth. You lie to yourself constantly, and that self-deception is etched into your smallest reactions. When you say, "I'm fine," but your hand tightens unconsciously. When you smile at someone, but a flicker of envy runs through your chest. These fragments are the map showing what you are avoiding. The first step is not to change immediately, but to practice observing without judgment. Try this habit for one day. Don't just listen to the words you speak. Pay attention to what your body and reflexes do. Don't just hear others, notice the silences they leave behind. That is the first way light enters the dark rooms. Nietzsche once wrote that the mask man wears long enough becomes who he is. But if you begin to notice the cracks, you will recognize what is a mask and what is real. And when you do that, you don't just read others. You begin to dismantle the disguise you have grown used to living in. Consider this the first door opening inside the inner house. You don't need to step in yet. Only let light pour through the gap. From there, you will start to see outlines that you once thought didn't exist. And in that moment, the journey of understanding others will move in parallel with the journey of understanding yourself. Have you ever wondered why, no matter how determined you are, you still end up breaking your discipline? You set the alarm. Promise yourself you'll wake up early. But in the morning, your hand unconsciously hits snooze. You swear you'll eat clean. yet your body somehow guides you straight to the drawer of sweets. This isn't just weak willpower. This is the 15th truth. Your unconscious is always trying to keep you in the comfort zone, even if that zone is a prison. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And the unconscious has a special mechanism. It uses procrastination, distraction, and laziness as alarm systems to protect you from deeper fears. You're not avoiding the report simply because you're lazy. You're avoiding it because you fear judgment, fear failure, and fear seeing yourself as imperfect. Which is why this is the 16th truth. Behind every act of self-sabotage, there is always a fear you have not faced. The unconscious doesn't care if you succeed or fail. It only cares about keeping you in the familiar. Even familiar misery feels safer than unknown happiness. And this leads to the 17th truth. People will choose a familiar pain over an uncertain change. Think about toxic relationships that people still cling to. They know it drains them, yet they return, simply because it's familiar. This is where the unconscious is both ruthless and honest. It pulls you back to the same old chair, the same old road, the same old habit, not to punish you, but to protect you. But that protection becomes chains. Nietzsche reminded us, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." When you have not yet found your why, the unconscious defaults to pulling you back into the cycle of delay. Think about the last time you failed to hold your discipline. Instead of blaming yourself, "I am weak," pause and ask, what is my unconscious trying to protect me from? Is it the fear of being laughed at? The memory of rejection? When you ask this, you begin to see procrastination not just as the enemy, but as a mirror reflecting the shadow you haven't named, and that is the climax. It isn't discipline that betrays you. It is your own unconscious holding you in the loop, and that loop will continue until you dare to look directly at what the unconscious is hiding. Once you realize the unconscious is steering you, the next question is always, so what can I do? And here lies the 18th truth. You cannot erase the darkness. You can only recognize it and learn how to walk with it. That might sound abstract, but it begins with small, concrete steps. First, instead of trying to overhaul your entire life in one sweep, pick one simple behavior and observe it. For example, when you procrastinate starting a task, don't force yourself immediately into action. Pause for a minute and write down, what am I avoiding? What fear is surfacing? By naming it, you turn the unconscious into the conscious. Second, instead of harsh self-judgment, practice what I call minimum discipline. If you can't write 10 pages, write 1 paragraph. If you can't work out for 30 minutes, do 5. This principle not only sustains momentum, but it also sends a signal to your unconscious mind that change is safe. Finally, create a small ritual for yourself. It could be a deep breath before you begin, a chair reserved only for work, or a piece of music you play each morning. These rituals act as a bridge, helping you transition from your comfort zone into the growth zone with gentleness. This path is not about eliminating laziness, but about understanding it as the language of the unconscious. And when you learn to listen to that language, you are no longer chained by it. You begin to walk with true freedom. If you think you can hear these truths and then ignore them, pause for a moment and imagine 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what will your life look like if you keep silencing the voice inside? That is the most dangerous trap, the very truth Nietzsche always warned of. Man is not destroyed by great failures. but by the small habits repeated every single day. And when the unconscious keeps steering without your awareness, you are no longer the master of your life. You become just a tenant living inside your own body. Look directly at the consequences. First, procrastination will harden into identity. You will stop saying, "I procrastinate," and start saying, "This is just who I am." Second, hidden laziness will turn into self-devaluation, and you'll begin to believe you don't deserve what you dream of. And third, you will live in permanent conflict, longing to move forward, but always pulled back by invisible fears. That is the 15th truth. A fear left unchallenged always transforms into your ruler. Nietzsche once wrote that man can endure almost any how if he has a why to live for. But when you let the unconscious manipulate you, that why is no longer yours. It belongs to others, to society, to borrowed desires. You become a replica, not a singular being. Do not think you are immune. No one is immune. The price does not come as a violent storm, but as drops of water eroding your will day after day. One morning you will wake up and ask, "How did I get here?" But by then the answer won't matter, because the years will already be gone. This is a warning, not to plant fear, but to make you see that action is the only choice. Because the 16th truth is this: the unconscious does not sleep. If you do not choose consciousness, the darkness will choose for you. And when that happens, your life will no longer be the journey you live, but the script you are forced to perform. In the end, it all comes down to one very small choice. Will you let your life be led by unconscious habits, or will you stop, look directly, and begin to write your script? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is the 17th truth, a truth powerful enough to change the entire way you live. And the 18th truth is this: you don't need to be perfect to begin. You only need the courage to take one new step, and that step alone can open another path. Let what you've heard today not just pass by like words on a page. Choose one small action tonight. Write down a truth you've just recognized, or face one habit you've always avoided. No one can walk this path for you, but with just one step, the darkness will no longer have complete control. And if you feel this journey has touched something deep within you, let your mind open just a little more, because in the next video, it may be the very part of you still hidden that will finally be called by its true name.